So one of the strangest episodes of siege warfare ever occurring in history has to be that of the siege of the German city of Neuss in 1474, which was pretty much a disaster from start to finish for the attackers. The siege was led by this fine chap down here, Charles the Bold, the Duke of Burgundy, who agreed to put down a revolt in Cologne against the Archbishop in return for quite a bit of money, and as Neuss sat en route to Cologne for the Burgundians, this first had to be taken to secure their supply lines when they were besieging Cologne. Life is just never that simple though, as Holy Roman Emperor Frederick III had promised troops in defence of the region, but he didn't have any money, so they wouldn't be arriving anytime soon. However, what was an even bigger problem for Charles is that the garrison of Neuss had just been reinforced before the siege began by a few hundred experienced troops. Neuss was also an extremely well-defended city of stone walls, as well as the River Rhine to the east, which is down in this picture, using the river's tributaries to form a moat around the city, because Neuss understood the vital importance of the old medieval saying, make ditches, get bitches, and they also had enough supplies to last until Christmas, with the siege beginning in July of the year. Charles's Burgundian army also included troops from all across Europe, including England, Germany, Italy, and even some Swiss mercenaries, where they first surrounded the northern and western side of Neuss before taking these two islands here in the east, where the Neuss had positioned guns to annoy the Burgundians, but it wasn't without taking heavy casualties. Neuss was heavily bombarded with cannons, however it was seemingly Charles who was facing the bigger problems, as he was constantly harassed with assaults from the city of Neuss, as well as from Cologne, where at one point a pontoon bridge connecting these two islands collapsed, drowning some of his Italian troops. Things would go from bad to worse as word spread that the English archers were causing some ruckus and were about to desert due to not being paid, where Charles had to calm them down with some angry words, but when he was returning to his camp, the English archers now opened fire on him, just barely missing him, claiming that they had no idea it was Charles. Rumours spread that Charles has actually been killed by this attack though, and the Burgundians and English now started fighting each other, only stopping when Charles appeared, showing he was alive, and pardoning the English, but he now slept in his armour, just in case. The siege lines to Neuss also weren't as heavily constricting as first thought, as messages and supplies were still being snuck in and out, with one night a swimmer being captured with a message stating that Frederick was extremely close by with a huge army ready to smash the Burgundians back to Burgundy. Realising time wasn't on his side, Charles doubled his efforts and acted like a man possessed, being everywhere at once in camp, increasing bombardments on the city, as well as trying to dry out the city's moat by sinking barges into it. However, Neuss still held strong, as February the next year the Rhine flooded, meaning the two important islands had to be evacuated. A force from Cologne consisting of roughly 15,000 men now rocked up on the eastern side of the river, not confronting the Burgundians, but just annoying them, as well as word quickly arriving that Frederick was only a few miles south with a force of 20,000, however he would soon get there once he'd dealt with all the drunken brawls in his army. Charles was far too stubborn just to up and leave the siege he had worked so hard for, and while small assaults did take place between the two sides, in the end the siege fizzled out as the Pope threatened to excommunicate both sides if they started a full-scale war with each other. The siege lasted 11 months and cost Charles roughly 4,000 troops, and although he was never to know, he was on the brink of taking the city, as one chronicler tells us that the city was reduced to such a miserable condition they couldn't have held out for much more than 10 days longer.